Pause it.
Where's that? Oh, right up top there. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the October General Board meeting for Weston High School PTO. It's really nice to see so many people in person again and so many online. We had a great attendance at our last meeting and we're looking forward to today. I think many of you know there were a couple of reminders that we'll have Randi coming to speak to us, and she's Weston High School's college and career counselor. It's a very popular meeting when we have her as our guest. So thanks for coming out to see her. And before that, we'll be going through some general board business. And as well, we'll have our new principal, Megan Ward, who will come give us some updates. And I'm just going to get started with a couple of updates from the PTO. So what you were just, sorry, I was just asking Casey, it was, what's the phrase for the 9:30?
A secure school.
Yes, so just so you all know, at 9:30, there will be a secure school procedure. It will be going on. We are able to stay in the library and continue with our PTO meeting. And that will be going on around us. You'll hear one announcement and the school will be secured. It's not a lockdown, it's a different kind of a process. So I just also want to thank everybody who stopped by at our PTO table at the back to school night 2 weeks ago now. It was really great to see everybody in person. We had a PTO social gathering at Milestone afterwards, and so many people came out. It was really, really fantastic to see everybody. So thank you to everybody who came out and for those who helped at the PTO table. Good news on our PSAT prep boot camp. That's something that we do in collaboration with the high school, and it's a fundraiser as well as a program to benefit our kids and help them prepare and learn more about what the PSAT will be all about. We had more enrollees than we ever have. It's our highest enrollment this year. I want to thank Stephanie Morris, our chairperson from the PTO, who handles that, as well as our teachers who facilitated the math and the English parts of the PSAT study. Jessica DeBuono and Chris Sadler, and we're so thankful for them. I know it helped my daughters quite a bit, and I hope everybody was able to participate found the same. Just a quick update about the newsletter. We're going to be sending out bi-weekly on Tuesdays rather than Sundays. So if you don't see it in your inbox on Sunday, just know that they're coming out on Tuesdays now. And many of you know the homecoming dance is tomorrow, which everybody's been looking forward to. It's been well over 10 years since Weston High School had a homecoming dance. None of the students in high school right now have ever heard of or experienced or seen a homecoming dance at high school. So they're very psyched. It's been put together by the Student Government Association. They had the motivation to start planning it at the very beginning of the school year. They've done a great job. We have been helping them out through ticket sales. Today is the last day the PTO is helping sell tickets. All students need to purchase their ticket today. There will be no tickets at the door. So thank you to everybody who helped with that. Additionally, the PTO was able to give, this will be covered a bit more by Casey at Philanthropy when she speaks, but we were able to help them with a donation for the decorations. And we also have a team of PTO volunteers who will be helping them tomorrow decorate the gym. Next big thing, the PTO, as far as what we do, fundraising, is the Election Day Bake Sale, just getting the marketing out there for that soon. So when you see it, please consider donating some baked goods and donating some time selling that day. That's one of our more fun, well, they're all fun, but it's a fun fundraiser. And we're gonna try and move along pretty quickly with the meeting today because we want to make sure we've got plenty of time for our guest speaker. So I'm going to move to our treasurer, Mona Sharma, for the presentation of our financials.
Passing around the financials to everyone. And we'll just take one of each. So I'll get started with the operating budget, or operating account for August of 2022. For the month, we received amount for interest and release payments of $159 for our gym membership and $1,500 for our staff appreciation costs. That left us with an operating cash balance as of August of $159. Any questions on our operating report as of August? I'm gonna move on to philanthropy. For the month of August, we received amounts for interest and we received amounts for our class of 2023 senior signs. That was $586 for August. And then we made payments related to the road race of $1640, which left us with a cash balance of $49,781, of which $20,845 is allocated. And then we have $28,936 remaining for allocation as of the end of August. Any questions on our financials? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve our August financials. Make a second.
I'm going to launch the approval.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're right.
Yeah,
Well,
they make a motion.
After they make the motion, okay.
So Christina, you're a second?
Yep.
Okay,
Second.
great. Okay, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who was first?
Casey.
Yes. Okay. I just had a message that's a little hard to hear the guest speaker or the speaker. So if we could all just be aware of that. Glenn,
That's the microphone.
yeah.
Maybe we can.
Yeah.
Over there a little bit more.
Lynn, thank you for the text message. We will continue to try to make sure the audio is good for you. Text me if you have any other issues hearing us. We'll need to move this back in the middle though, so the
Mhm.
people out front will be able to be heard as well. Okay, so thank you very much, Mona. I appreciate that. Next up is Kiati, who's home online. She's our secretary and will be presenting the unapproved minutes from our last general board meeting for approval. And I shared them online yesterday with the board, and there's a few copies around here that were put out for review. So Kiati.
Hi, should I share it on the screen here, the minutes, or it's fine?
No, that's fine.
All right, so with that, I would like to present the general board meeting minutes from September 9th, 2022. Does anybody have any questions? If not, can I have a first?
Kristana's raising her hand,
Second.
and Casey for second.
Casey for second. Thank you. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Are we doing the online thing? Thank you. All right, thank you. That's approved.
Thank you, Kiati. And now we're going to turn over to Liv, who is our communications and web chair. We're just gonna move
The camera?
the camera and the mic, so we've got you there.
I don't have any major update, just a reminder to send all the submission for the newsletter by today, and the newsletter will go out on Tuesday morning. Very quick.
Next up, we have Casey Saucy.
I'll bring over the.
So I have two updates of your philanthropy dollars at work. The executive board approved a $500. I may have said it last month, but I can't remember. It makes me nervous. So we approved $500 for the freshman welcome kits, that if you didn't see them, they were adorable. They had, anyway, very clever things inside. If anybody's interested, we can share a photo. And the second approval that the executive board has done is $500 for decorations for the SGA to use for homecoming tomorrow night. The executive board can approve requests up to $500. Anything over $500 needs to be approved by the general board. And those of you who were around last spring might remember that Mr. Durand was trying to get some yoga mat meditation chairs for alternative seating for teachers to use. And what he submitted, we had some questions about and sent him back to do a little bit more research on something that would be easier to clean and more durable than a meditation cushion per se. So he has come back, and if you want to share the screen of the, it's the Chrome at the bottom. Yeah. So he's come up with these proposal for these very flexible yoga bolster yoga mats. Will provide flexible classroom seating and practicing yoga or mindful meditation. The mats are foldable and flexible. And you can see the pictures on the site. It could be used for lots of other different purposes. It could be an amazing resource for students and teachers both to have an option to make up classroom spaces more configurable and friendly, and also move authentically and comfortably, develop mindful meditation skills that could be transformative to students' overall social and emotional learning. He's got some detail on these particular mats, but basically this dual purpose mat reduces the need to gather extra gear when stretching or doing yoga on the floor. Use it as a traditional mat to add comfort when performing moves. It also is divided into 12 sections, allowing users to fold it however they wish into a custom supportive bolster. Using a bolster while exercising and stretching provides users with extra comfort and support. And it's a longer mat than what we were looking at before. Because one of the things that I know Megan is, our new principal is proposing, is new different ways to think about the classroom and seating and engaging students in different ways. The executive board approved his request. His request was actually for 10 to 20 mats that would cost $1,299, but because we also want to think about more accessible seating arrangements for those with less mobility or just different mobility issues and needs. We asked him to, we actually approved for 20 mats at $1,299, and then we added another $325 into this budget. So we approved $1,624 to allow him some wiggle room to look for some more accessible seating. We've been going back and forth, and he's actually now talking to the occupational therapist with the district to find what would be appropriate for those with less mobility to add in there. We believe that the $325 provides enough for a couple of these items, whatever they are. If it turns out that he needs more, we will come back to the committee, but at this point, we are asking for an approval of $1,624 for these yoga mats. Anybody have any questions? Okay, motion to approve. Are there any questions online? No, okay. Who motioned? Did we catch it? Okay, Christina. And second? All in favor? I think it's approved. Mr. Durand will be very excited. Thank you, guys. He's been working on this a long time, and we'll let you know next month what we buy for the, or what he finds for the accessible seating. So thank you.
Who was first? I didn't get the name.
Christina?
Christina. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Casey. I'm really excited for Mr. Durand and all the
And all the
students who will get to benefit. So next up, we have our BOE chairperson, who is our liaison, who reports back from BOE meetings, Andrew Chi. I'm gonna send the microphone back down that way. And
Yeah, sure. So this coming Monday will be the next Board of Education meeting. But in the previous Board of Education meeting, two students from the student government presented the upcoming Trojan kickoff pep rally and the homecoming dance. And then the superintendent of Weston was sharing about the change in staff. So recently there were 14 resignations that were followed by 30 new hires, including 5 world language teachers, 1 English teacher, 1 psychologist, and 1 social worker. And on that note, towards the end of the meeting, there was a discussion about special education. And in that discussion, the school district was talking about the need for an additional assistant directors, so that in total there would be 1 director for special education and 3 assistant directors, and each assistant director would take care of certain segments of the student of the grades. So that would include 9th through 12th in the 3rd section. Then the assistant director would direct. And then lastly, the superintendent talked about the comparison and contrast between the math and reading scores for Weston students versus surrounding school districts. And she said that to begin with, there's a cycle of improvement. So I don't know if you guys can see this diagram here, but there's a cycle of improvement with 5 different steps. And during the recent Board of Education meeting, she discussed 2 of those steps. And she said in the future, she's going to talk about the other steps involved. So the first step is how well are we doing? And the second step is how do we compare with similar schools? And so for this, she was discussing the NWEA and SAB scores for the students. And just to make a long story short, some of the important highlights are that in general, overall, the students here at Weston are meeting the goals the school district had set. There was some decline, particularly in the middle school, but overall, the students in Weston have been improving and compared to the years prior to the pandemic. And so in more recent scores, Weston is high up on the list behind Darien and New Canaan. Any other, does anybody have any questions or comments about any of this? Yes.
Has anyone talked about, obviously during the pandemic,
Mhm.
I would anticipate that there were gaps in content or absorption of content across, are they, because of course, anybody who had gaps, whether it was instructional or learning during the, especially during the pandemic, it'd be coming back to haunt them still because, you know, obviously with building, you know, things like foreign language and math building on itself, are they talking about anything like that, or are the teachers working towards filling in gaps that are still kind of coming to the surface?
Yes, there was some discussion about that. And so to narrow in on the problems spot, it seems like it's in the middle school where math seems to have an overall decline. And so for that reason, the school district has started a new Desmos curriculum for sixth graders and has also included a math workshop and an English workshop as well. And yeah, there was some discussion about that, but they didn't get into all the possible causes. per
Not in
se.
the high school?
And for the high school, yeah, there wasn't very much time to go into
Okay.
detail.
Okay, but they're not, are they seeing the gaps there or not as much?
No, not as much as the middle school.
The gaps are not, I'm sorry, to add, I'm just adding here.
Yes.
We're seeing gaps.
Yeah.
Everywhere across the
Yeah,
country,
I would
right?
think, yeah, of course.
So we are doing, I mean, we're all kind of learning through this process as we go forward, but we're trying our best to address the gaps that the largest gaps that we see right now. Though we had some positive news about the high school yesterday. I don't know if anybody saw that patch article that came out about the SATs. It showed that Weston actually had done really well, number one in math.
One in English.
One in English, sorry,
and
and then
three in
three in math, correct.
In the state.
In the state. So yeah, so that's some positive news, right? But at the same time, we're not taking our eye off the ball, and we understand that there are definitely some deficits that everyone experienced, and we're making sure that the teachers are digging in and filling those in so that they're not feeling this when by the time they leave Weston High School, they'll be complete. But as you mentioned, the middle school is a big area of concern. And to be perfectly honest with you, the middle school is a little bit of an area of concern prior to the pandemic as well. And it's just a really tricky time for kids, for learning the whole spiel. But that it's something that we are looking at very closely.
I think the only other thing I would add from what I recall from the meetings is that there is a cohort within the freshman class that there's focus on as well, having just come from the middle school based on, the test results from last year.
I can speak to that a little bit, just so.
Yeah.
So we just administered, hi, everybody. I'm Megan, for those of you that I haven't met, principal. We administered the NWEA testing to ninth graders. We also administered PSATs to 10th and 11th graders, but the NWEA is more of a formative screener that we administered both the reading and math on Wednesday. The nice part and sometimes the tricky part about NWEA is that kids don't necessarily finish in one test session. So what we tried to do on Wednesday was say, okay, we'll give you so much time for math and so much time for reading. What we recognize, I think we have 72 students in reading and 62 in math. I could be flipping those numbers that have not finished. So, but we have some preliminary information, and what that'll really tell us are what strands, we're seeing some weaknesses in. Often the students who are our highest performers take the longest because it's a computer adaptive test that just keeps giving them more questions. So we think we have some good preliminary data, and then we're going to help teachers access NWA so they can dig into the students they have into their classroom, and then really focus on what they need in order to fill any gaps that may exist. So I think we're in a good place. And yes, it's good news about the SAT.
That's great news.
Sharon, I have a question. On meetings back in person, they were so helpful when I used to go, but I just cannot sit there on Zoom and watch it at
BOEs,
night.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's happened is we, as the board, we want to make sure that we can reach as many people as possible. We had the in-person meetings. The in-person meetings would end up having 2 or 3 people that show up. And then most people would end up watching it online. So we had a much larger audience when we were doing them on Zoom than when we were doing them in person. That being said, it's really important for us to have in-person meetings as well, especially for recognitions and things like that. So what we decided to do as a board was, in order to maximize our audience, let's do a hybrid model. So at least once a quarter, we're going to make sure that we're doing an in-person meeting, and the other 2 meetings will be Zoom. Now, the reason why we're doing it this way too is in addition to making sure that we meet because we had YouTube videos of the meeting so people could watch them later on, but the quality was bad. You couldn't see who was speaking half the time, and it was a video of the screen. So what was on the screen was blurry a lot of times. There was no share screen option. So what we've done is.
Sharon, I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you for
Yeah.
just 1 second. We're
Sure.
about to have a secure the school drill. I don't know if, yeah, it's gonna come up on the screen, but that just means we're all staying put, classes are staying put, and we're gonna conduct business as usual.
Perfect. Our first lockdown.
I will look it up and close it.
So yeah, so that's what we're doing is we're doing basically a hybrid model.
Okay.
So 2 meetings a quarter will be on Zoom, and then we've got the Zoom technology now, which is, Dan DeVito's gonna kill me for not being able to remember exactly the name of it, but basically it's where you can have a large group, people can participate, there can be, public comment. It's not like you have to go into a waiting room and go around like we did with the old one. So we're gonna be in Zoom. You'll be able to see the screen, what's being presented. There'll be a share screen option. So the overall experience should be much better for the user than the YouTube experience. So again, just trying to maximize the number of people who can actually attend. We also got a lot of feedback from people too, saying, I can't get a babysitter and go sit for 3 or 4 hours in the middle school library. That being said, there's also a cost to these in-person meetings too. So we're trying to, as a board, make sure every dollar that we can divert towards the kids is being sent to the kids. So rather than paying overtime for people to come in and set up the meetings and set up the tables and set up the microphones and all that stuff, if we could just do that once a quarter, that seemed like a positive move.
When is your next in-person meeting?
I believe it's in December.
This is a drill.
So October, November
This
will
is a
be,
drill. Secure
October,
school.
November will be
Secure
hybrid.
school.
And then, or Zoom, and then December, we're gonna have an in-person meeting. It also happens to go with, so it's a good meeting to go to, because we have some nice recognitions for students as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on that one?
When is the
Monday. Monday.
All right, well, thank you so much, Andrew and Sharon, for the feedback. So, all right, so next up on our agenda, we have our SJ liaison, which is our students, Jaya Sharma, who is in class and secure right now. And is not able to come read her report. However, there was a Senate meeting of the SGA yesterday. And she reported back, I'll read you what she said. Today we discussed the Power Puff game. It's next Friday. We made sure that the jerseys were coming in on time and that each grade group got their assigned materials, candy and beads, etc. We then discussed the homecoming week theme days, in that every grade student should make sure they had their grade make sure that their grade participates in the dress up. So they're trying to make sure everybody participates in Spirit Week next week with the dress up themes they have planned. As far as the homecoming dance, we had 240 tickets bought yesterday, and 25 were purchased on Wednesday, which from what I know, I think about 75 were sold on Tuesday. So we're at about 300 tickets sold. I'm sure we're going to be quite a few more later today. And then Jay went on to say, as far as homecoming decorating, we talked with the National Art Honor Society, and they're making some posters for us. We established that student government must put up and take down the homecoming decorations in the gym. Regarding the floats for the homecoming game, each student government grade group will meet next Friday, the 21st at 2:30 after school to decorate. So they've been working really hard between the dance and all the plans for homecoming. It's going to be a great week next week. Do you have anything to add, or I was going to ask?
Did they find trucks? I know that was an issue in years past.
I believe they've all found trucks.
I feel like we would have heard if they didn't.
Yes.
Is
So no news is good news.
what is that non-truck vehicle up for discussion? There's a special vehicle, one of the grades.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I
You'll-
give it
okay.
now, yeah.
That's all right. We've got more news on the trucks for the parade
No,
and
no,
no
no.
coming up in the parent rep reports. That was all we had from Jaya from the SGA about
student life and what's going on here. Next would be our grade class parent reps. I don't have a report for the seniors right now. Is Carly online? Yes.
I'm here.
Carly, hi, how are you?
Hi, sorry, I have a meeting right after this, so couldn't come in. But we don't have any major news for the class of 2024. I hope everyone by now is on our Facebook page that we're trying to share information, and sorry for the barrage of reposting emails, but it's so easy to miss things. So hopefully you're on and getting things there, and please be in touch with any of us if you have any questions or need anything. We are planning some kind of social activity for the juniors, hopefully sometime in the fall, just as a way for them to get together and just have a nice social time together. And that's it.
Thank you, Carly. Next up, sophomores. Jawad, are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Not a lot going, same as Carly. In particular with the sophomores, we did meet with the Student Government Association for 2025, which is a sophomore class. And they asked for some support to find a truck. Students are doing decades theme for the floats. So each grade has a different decade. 2025 has the 70s, and a wonderful family in town that do not have kids in high school caught the word of it, and they are offering their 1977 Bronco. So the kids are super excited about that. And we're still in hot pursuit of a disco ball. If anybody has a disco ball that they would like to lend, we're still on that. The kids are working really hard. And then from a all grade class rep perspective, we are meeting, we're organizing to deliver food and snacks while the kids are decorating the floats. We did that last year just for the freshmen as an idea for them. And it actually ended up being a whole school good deed, because the kids then, there was a lot left over, and the freshmen were able to walk over to the upperclassmen and offer them snacks, and that kind of created some sort of bond or social moment there that was a nice on the side situation that happened. So this year we're going to actually give snacks and food for all 4 grades, and the class reps are working on that. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Jawad. All right, so we have our freshmen, and I want to know if Ann Kyle. Oops. Well, Ann's here, and sorry. And Jocelyn. Sorry.
Our class Facebook page is up. Parents who have not joined, to encourage others to join. And myself and Lori went to meet with the student reps and their advisors about a week and a half ago. All clear. The drill is over. We did talk to them about homecoming. I offered any help that they might need. They seem to have everything under control. And our freshman SGA run Facebook page is also up. So just encouraging parents to let their kids know that this group actually is not our group, it's the kids group, and they should sign up for it to get information. And then the other piece of update we had is we still have a space available for a 4th rep for the freshman class. It's a 1-year, 4-year position. Probably could be discussed, but if there's anyone out there with a freshman, we'd love to have you on our team.
Thank you so much for that.
We're done with all of the PTO updates. I'd like to turn over to Principal Megan Ward now.
Oh, we have a question.
Oh, sorry.
Before, no, not at all, didn't we? From Sarge, depending on, let me say Sarge, depending on what that person needs to do, okay, thank you, Sarge. I'll pass over the word to the freshman. Thank you so much.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on? All right.
Yes, I can too.
So we're gonna turn over to our principal, Megan.
Hi, everybody. Again,
morning.
good morning. Thanks for your patience in our drill. It actually is good what we practice when we have adults in the building and we're just business as usual. So thanks. So like I said, we had PSAT and NWA testing. Thank you to the PTO for the snacks. They were a huge hit. They were a bright spot in, 3.5 hours of testing for the kids. So thank you. Everything went well for testing. We have homecoming coming up. As we said, we have the dance this weekend that we're super excited for. We have a really spirited week. And we're just excited. I'm excited to see how it goes. I've never experienced a homecoming here. So, and to add a dance to it, it's going to be awesome. We are having a speaker. We're partnering with ADAP. We're partnering with ADAP, Alcohol and Drug Awareness Program. And we are sponsoring a speaker, Matt Bellis. I can't remember whether I talked about this at the last meeting. Okay, so Matt Bellis is, will talk to students about drug and alcohol awareness, preventing abuse. He also does a theme about life is disappointing. So our feedback was, thank you to Sonia, who partnered with us. What we went back to Sonia with, and both Dan Doak and I said, if he could do something that actually share some space with the alcohol and drug prevention, but also the life is disappointing aspect, because that's really what we're seeing. And our goals for this year in terms of our healthy learning environment and social emotional learning needs of our students is really building on their perseverance and resilience skills. I think one of the benefits sometimes in a lot of ways, COVID, they have persevered through a lot and they are here. They're happy to be here. I think the reason we have a homecoming dance this year is because they wanted it and they want to get back to those kinds of routines and norms of high school, which is awesome. And we'd seen a drop in all schools in this region in terms of students wanting to come to a dance or an event at schools because they can, and what I've heard from students over the years is it's more fun to hop on a train and go into the city and kind of create their own adventures. So I think that the kids have really recognized that they like to be together and they like to meet different people and have those social moments. And so we're really excited for the dance. So the Matt Bellis presentation is on November 16th. We're going to do 2 in-school assemblies in the morning for the high school. We're doing an afternoon assembly here as well. We're inviting the 7th and 8th graders over. And then the night of the 16th, Matt is actually going to do a session for parents via Zoom. And not only for Weston parents, but we're also partnering with area communities. And I know that Sonia's working and others in the community are working on partnerships with Westport and Positive Directions and other local community groups. So that was really exciting to hear. Other than that, we're kind of trucking along. As I said, we have more information coming out of those test results that we're going to use in our classes to see how kids are doing. We have a board meeting on Monday, and our district goals will be presented. Our school goals will be shared, and we're just really excited to keep on going with a more typical school year.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Sorry. Yeah. So I'm just going to turn over to Jawad, who is our VP at the PTO, and she coordinates all our guest speakers. And I'd like her to just have a moment to say hello and introduce our speaker.
And just before, I think there's a question for Megan. It says, don't know if this is the place to share feedback on the testing that took place this week, but I heard that unfortunately there seemed to be some problems with the computers of several students. So they need to use Chromebooks, which had much smaller screens. This was not ideal. Any way to make sure in the future this does not happen?
So we are in a moment right now where our testing is, some of our testing is transitioning to online testing. And we have a bring your own device environment. And we are in a situation where we have to install certain browsers on computers. And we had, so I think it was last week, we did an advisory where we had students install the browsers, whether it was on their own personal device, and for some students, we knew that we would need to give them a Chromebook device. All schools are in this situation, whether you are testing students in the NWA. I know that my children are in an area district, and my daughter actually took the PSAT 9 online and had to bring her school-based Chromebook to school. So the Chromebooks actually are the device that many of these, the school-based Chromebooks are the devices that many of these testing platforms work on. If there's a specific situation in regards to accommodations that a child might need because that screen is smaller, that's something that we would probably have to address to look at, like typeface and how we can enlarge that type for a student. But many students have their own computer and that screen that they're used to looking at. So I think that's maybe more of a personal conversation, or if parents have concerns about the way their student access the test, they should certainly get in contact with me. But this is just the world that we're in now. We're, the 10th and 11th PSAT test was still given on pencil and paper. I will tell you that is much more desirable for us and certainly far easier to maintain and implement. And so the computer adaptive tests and just taking those tests on those secure browsers certainly presents some challenges.
Will the SAT this year still be on paper?
I believe so. Yeah, I think what they're doing.
Just want them to practice in the format.
I think that they're starting, I have no necessarily true indication of this. College Board does their own thing. My thinking was that College Board is trialing this with 9th grade.
Yeah.
And so maybe
It
it's
was
simple.
gonna transition at some point.
Last year's
Last year
was
was
online.
Yeah,
And it was
last year
awful.
the in-school was online, but the Saturday test date in March was on paper.
Right.
And so we were sort of actually looking at the scores because some students took it both on the Saturday, March date, and then, 2 weeks later in school. And we were sort of looking to see if there was like any significant discrepancy in scores. And it wasn't really like a huge difference. Some kids did a little better online and some kids did a little bit better on paper. But that's what happened last year. The Saturday test dates were still on paper, and I think those still will be. The in-school administration in March was online last year. I'm assuming that.
Is that what it'll be this year?
I think
Because you
so.
want your kids to practice in the format that they're gonna take ideally.
Yes, and kids are savvier than we are, right? So they've also been taking the NWA testing here for a number of years. So when they took the NWA testing online on Wednesday, they've been doing that. We'll definitely continue to monitor, but if there are any other special circumstances or individualized circumstances, they should definitely either reach out to their counselor, it could be to me, it could be their assistant principal, but definitely let us know.
Am I able to, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I thought it might be easier just to speak instead of writing. So I understand, I appreciate and understand your answer. It really doesn't answer the question though. So I can take it offline, that's fine. But the testing, the install of the software was done appropriately. It was checked, it was working. But the day of the exam, where kids are worried about the exams, I know that several, including my son, it did not work. So they had a Chromebook, which was different than what they're used to using. So they did all the pre-work. So I'm just asking in the future, how can we do better pre-work to make sure it works on the computer they're used to? Because also my son talked about, he was looking for ways to make the font bigger so he could see it on the Chromebook as well as he could see it on his other computer. But in the moment, it's difficult to do that, right? So I'm just looking for a future, not complaining about past. What can we do in the future to make sure that he also explained that several of his friends who had similar, I'd say Mac books, if you will, were having the problem as well and had to use Chromebooks. So seems to be an issue. I'm willing to help and get involved. How do we solve it? But I'd like to think about for the future. Okay.
Yes, and we are thinking about for the future, and I don't want to belabor the point, but some students, we had on that Wednesday that we installed the secure browser on computers, we'd also send students home who might have had parental controls on their laptop. So I don't know what the situation was with your son exactly, and we can have further conversations if you want, but some students had gone home and they maybe had not gotten permissions from the administrator of their computer, who's their parent, to download the secure browser. There was also a Mac issue on Wednesday. Some of these things we're looking at what the issues were with our tech folks to prevent these going forward. So some of them were on an individualized basis that they didn't have permissions to install the browser, even though the week before they had been told to make sure that they get those permissions that night and get it done when you go home. And some were, we know that a personal Chromebook did not work with the browser, but we know that the school Chromebook did work with the browser. So we now know all of those exceptions to some of the hurdles that we saw on Wednesday. So it's definitely something that we're aware of and working in prevention for next time.
Great, just food for thought. It might be good, like you said, and I know it's time driven, but you know, you all these things coming up and you can't account for everything. That's what I'm saying. In the future, it'd be great because I know that when students are ready to take the test and have to worry about those things and changing, it also puts their mindset in a different place. So that's why I was saying, you know.
That's why we did the installation the week before, but certainly there are more things to consider based on the administration on Wednesday, and we're considering those with our tech folks. But thanks for the feedback.
Thank you so much. I'm going to turn back over to Jawad for a moment. We have our guest speaker here and we'd love to get started with her, and we'll open up for questions again after. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Megan. And today we're super excited to have Randi Green, Director of Counseling Services. I don't know if I said that right.
Career counseling.
Career
and college
counseling, I should know, here at the school. So with no further ado, I am going to pass it over to her. And
Hi, okay.
start. She's gonna stand. Great.
Is it, yeah, what's the best place for me
Do you
to
want to
sit?
stand here?
Or here? What makes sense for everybody? If I chat this way, does this make sense?
Yeah,
You guys can
this
put me
is great.
Yeah.
Right over
Better
here?
for you.
Oh, over there?
Yeah.
Sure. Oh God, I'm coming. I'm gonna stand because this is like the only form of exercise I'm gonna get today is standing for like an hour. Okay, so. Yeah, it's a crazy time, but I'm happy to be here.
So
Gets me up from my desk.
I guess a November meeting maybe would have been better.
It's fine. It's fine.
So you'll be here?
Sorry, Jawad.
I don't know, somewhere in this area. You guys here? Does this feel good? Can everybody see me and hear me?
yes.
Awesome. So first of all, hi to a lot of familiar faces in the room. I'm like so happy. Oh, we're throwing water bottles at me. We're great. Okay. Really happy to be here. Sorry about that. I'm just gonna need that in case I have to drink out of it. Thanks. Happy to be here. Happy to see a lot of you guys in person. Some of you I know have already been through this process, and some of you have seniors that are in the room right now. So those of you with seniors, I know I've spoken to many of you recently, and we are in this. We're in the thick of it. We're all in this, struggling together. One of your children I am meeting with directly after this presentation, but so I want to start just by introducing myself. I know that not everybody who's participating online and in person has met me before, but for those of you who have 9th grade students and have never been through this process, I'm Randi Green. I am the Director of College Counseling here. This is my 5th year at Weston High School. Prior to Weston, I was the college counselor at Greenwich High School for 10 years. I was at another very similar public school, Mountain Lakes in New Jersey. And I was at an independent school in North County, San Diego, Pacific Ridge School. And I worked at SUNY Maritime College before that. I have a master's in school counseling, but all of my career has focused specifically on post-secondary planning. I fell into this career. I was in advertising when I first graduated college. And I realized really quickly into advertising, I was not cut out for that. And I really wanted to help people and work with them. I didn't know in what capacity, but throughout graduate school, in working in graduate school admissions and doing a career counseling course, I became highly interested in this. And I was so lucky. I didn't even know this was a position, a thing in high schools, that there was like a designated college counselor. And there really wasn't. When I got the position at Greenwich, I was the only one in the state in a public high school, the only public high school that had a certified college counselor on staff. And I was kind of like the lone wolf in Connecticut for about, gosh, I think like 7 years. And now more and more high schools have started adding it. There's actually 8 of us that meet quarterly, the public high school college counselors in Connecticut. We meet quarterly to share best practice and sort of think about how we can best serve our students. So that is me. I work very closely with the school counseling department. My office is in the Career Center in the guidance office. And we are absolutely a team. We work very, very collaboratively. The meeting I have with one of your students who's in this room right now, right after this, it's me and the student's counselor meeting with the student together. So they have a lot of hands-on support. And basically, I don't have a designated caseload. So basically juniors and seniors are my caseload. So at any given point in the year, there are 360 students typically that have access to me. But I'm going to talk you through a little bit about the timeline and sort of how I work with students and the timeline in which the school counseling department works with students. There's a lot of ground to cover, so I might talk a little quickly. I'm a New Yorker, but you know, if there are questions in the end, please don't hesitate to ask. It's a Friday, but I wore my fancy blazer for this. So I was actually kind of like excited to talk to you guys and to have a group of parents. But basically, so I want to kind of talk about just, Joad and I had sort of gone back and forth a little bit and talked about like what points parents might be interested in hearing the most about. And this is going to be sort of a general overview. And then also talking a little bit about the current landscape and admissions, so some insight I can offer, but I am aware that there's a range of parents, right? So some of you might already know this pretty well. For those of you who have had multiple kids go through the process, I apologize, this might get boring, but basically, so right now I want to say that I want to first take you through the timeline of what to expect between 9th and 12th grade in the college process. So 9th grade, I cannot emphasize this more. I do not want 9th grade parents or students focusing on college. It leads to immense stress and pressure for both students and parents. It takes away from a student's ability to be fully present in their high school experience. The college process changes so much from year to year that what's relevant in 9th grade will not be relevant when it comes time for that student to apply. 9th grade is a time for students to engage in their coursework, become acclimated to high school level work, to get involved in the community, figure out what they're interested in, figure out what they're not interested in, right? Make some new friends, grow up a little bit, right? Start to do a little bit more independent coursework. And all of that ultimately will serve them well, right? When it comes time to apply to college, because hopefully they're authentically learning.
On Friday, October 21st, Unified Sports is hosting the first annual.
I'm gonna chat over this, if that's okay. Is that okay? Or will that be hard for you guys to focus on? Okay. That will all serve them well, right? So 9th grade, focusing on, you know, acclimating to the high school environment, working hard in your classes, connecting with the community in meaningful ways. It's not about doing everything. It's not about checking the boxes and doing what you think you need to do, but really figuring out what a student loves and is exciting to them and throwing themselves into that, right? Hopefully it becomes something that they can continue being involved in throughout their high school experience. So that's 9th grade. 10th grade. So 10th grade.
Sorry, we got one more.
Take a sip of water.
Tomorrow is the Western High School homecoming dance. Please wear rubber-soled shoes. Also, Monday will be PJ Day. Make sure to wear your PJs, get comfy. And there'll be a food drive going on all of next week that will all build up spirit points, in which you will win a prize thanks to student government. So, thank you guys all. Please turn in those permission slips. Get your tickets for homecoming. See you tomorrow.
You guys also had a secure school drill during this time too. That's
And a
awesome.
colorful meeting.
Yeah, lights flashing. I may do a dance soon, so you guys don't know. But so 10th grade. 10th grade is where there starts to be some college related activity, right? So this past Wednesday, 2 days ago, sophomores took the practice PSAT. This is a practice for a practice test, okay? We do not want students stressing. There is not anybody in the world of higher ed who will ever see this score, okay? It will not be used in any meaningful way other than for students to start to see what this test is like and to get a benchmark, right? In sophomore year, this is how I did on this particular standardized test. We don't want students stressing about it. Those scores typically come out in early December. Again, they can be informative, but to the extent that we can reduce stress in this community, we really want to. And I think reminding ourselves this is a practice test, okay? But they will take that. And then a little bit later in the year, in the spring, they'll have interaction with the school counseling department. They'll do an interest inventory based on the Myers-Briggs, so it's called Do What You Are, and it helps students to learn a little bit more about their interests, their personality, how it might relate to future careers and the college majors associated with those careers. And last year I did a new thing with sophomores that we had never done before. I had meant to do it in March of 2020, but you know, that didn't go very well. Nothing happened in March of 2020. And then, but we were finally able to implement it this past spring. So we did what's called a case studies program with the sophomores. So the day that the in-school SAT happens for juniors, which this year I think is like March 24th or 22nd, 23rd or 24th, whatever that Wednesday is. We did an activity with sophomores where I gave them 4 sample applications to college, a profile of a college, okay, a rubric to score the applications, and full applications with letters of recommendation, college essays, activity sheets, transcripts. And the students got together in small groups. They each read all of the application packets. They read the profile of the college, and then they each had to admit a student, deny 2 students, and waitlist a student. And then they had to write their rationale, right, for each one. And then each student got up and everybody had different answers, right? Everyone had different answers. And the point of this program, first of all, it's fun, but the point of it is help them to understand that this process is subjective, right? And everybody can interpret things differently. And it in no way meant that like a student that one group may have admitted was any less worthy than the, than the other student the other group would have admitted. But that it's also a flawed process, right? We're human beings trying to, but it also helps students to understand an institution's priorities. Well, colleges have their own things that they need to look at, right? But the reason we also did it with sophomores was so that they could see the components of a college application, so that in the spring of sophomore year, they could be thinking to themselves a little bit, oh, there's 10 spaces I could potentially fill up on the Common App to write about my activities. Oh, and I have to list the hours per week and weeks per year that I'm involved. How engaged am I, outside of the classroom? And oh my God, one of my junior year teachers, 2 of my junior year teachers are gonna have to write me letters of recommendation. Like, they're gonna write about who I am in the classroom. I should probably be thinking about those relationships, right? And that the transcript is weighed so heavily, right? And so what do my grades look like? What kinds of classes am I taking? So it's also to kind of help give them an idea of the things that will be compiled as part of their overall college process. The kids had a lot of fun with it. We had a lot of fun with it. I think we're going to do it again this year on SAT day. And, I like taking feedback and seeing what works. And we're always sort of like revisiting kind of how much contact we want to give sophomores with the college process. It's a dance, right? I know that some families are so eager and chomping at the bit. I've had middle school parents call me for advice, and it worries me, right? Because it does. But so I think this feels like a good balance. We expose kids to it, we have fun with it, but it's not so pressuresome. So that's working for now. So that happens in sophomore year. Then there's junior year, and junior year is when certainly everything starts to ramp up. So they take the PSAT also again in October of junior year. Now this is the practice test that's still practice, but it could count. It would qualify students if they are in the top, like 1% of testers in the state for national merit. But other than that, beyond that, for 95, 98% of our students, it's simply a practice test, again, to give you another baseline of how you might perform on the actual SAT. Then also in the fall, so September and October and half of November, we have college admissions reps come and visit Weston High School. About 220 colleges come, the admissions reps. Typically it's our reader. They come and they visit the Career Center. Students can sign up in advance. Those are open to juniors and seniors. Both juniors and seniors have been emailed instructions on signing up for those visits. We had like 28 kids at the Michigan visit at 7:45 this morning. So like, that's really, really encouraging that on Friday at 7:45 in the morning, we got that many enthusiastic seniors here. But it's a great way to learn more about colleges and demonstrate some interest in those colleges. So juniors can participate in those as well, but they have to get advanced teacher permission to miss a class, and they cannot miss an exam or a quiz to participate. And if they can't make it to one junior year, they can always sit in on that college visit senior year. But then they take the PSAT in October. Then in December, we're still hammering out the date for this year. I think we're looking at December 6th is going to be our junior college kickoff. That is our big presentation for junior parents and their students. Usually we have near 100% participation in that. That's what we seek. where we give an entire overview of the entire college application process, our deadlines, timelines, things to remember, standardized testing, application policies, financial aid, all of that. We throw a ton of information at you, and then families can begin scheduling their individual junior college planning meeting or post-secondary planning meetings with their counselor and or me. Last year, I met with, I think it was about 87% of the juniors before the end of the school year, which was awesome that like that many students are taking, and they met with their counselor as well in many cases. Sometimes we do joint meetings and parents can request those if they want to have the counselor and me in the room and have one single meeting, and that's totally fine. And typically parents participate in that initial meeting as well. Not always, some students want to take the reins on their own, but usually parents do participate. And then in February, they do their course selection meeting with their counselor to go over their senior year courses. It's very important that students be thinking about the courses they're going to take. It's one of the key factors when colleges are evaluating a student for admission. How did they take advantage of the academic opportunities and the extracurricular opportunities afforded to them at their high school? And then in the spring, March, like I said, I don't know if it's the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th this year, but whatever that Wednesday is the in-school SAT. All of our juniors will take the in-school SAT. It's our state mandated test. Students, if they're happy with their score, can use it as part of their college application. If they're not happy with their score, they can sort of pretend it didn't happen. There's a handful of colleges that want to see all of your scores, but we'll go into more detail when it comes time for your child to go through that process. But often students are going to start after their individual post-secondary planning meeting, they're going to start scheduling college visits. And, you know, I know that there's been a number of junior families who have emailed me already requesting meetings. All of my time in the fall is dedicated to helping our 185 seniors get through the college application process. And I promise you that when your child's a senior, you're going to be happy that we are that dedicated to seniors. But there's also more data in December, January, February of junior year for us to actually be having appropriate conversations. We have some junior year grades at that point. We have PSAT scores at that point. We have an idea of the courses you plan to take senior year at that point. So it makes sense for us to start having those conversations. Did you have a question?
A question had come up
Sure.
online.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's okay. I saw it pop up on the big screen.
You okay?
I blew their
Oh, no.
She's a
So,
superstar
so I like, there.
Okay.
character. There we go.
Sure.
There's the question.
Oh,
What's that date again for the
Oh, let
in-school
me look
The
at
in-school
SAT?
SAT is the Wednesday of that March. So it's either the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. 22nd, thanks. Just gonna keep
22nd.
yelling out random dates until somebody checks the calendar. Thanks.
22nd.
And your students will automatically be registered for that, so they don't have to do anything to register. We register them through the state, all right? Okay, so that is, so then based on the conversations that we have, right, those conversations, those post-secondary planning meetings will really focus on trying to guide the student maybe toward appropriate classes to take senior year, but really focusing on building that list of colleges that might be appropriate and how to get a student started on that research. So many families will schedule college tours. February break, we have a full week this year. Yay. I will be on an island somewhere because that is what I do during February break. And then April break is also a really popular time to visit colleges. I will hopefully be in Napa at that point. But so those are really popular times for families to go and start to visit schools. Seeing them when they're in session is really great. You can see what the vibe with the campus is like. But we understand that sometimes students have spring sports. They can't, maybe the summer might be the best time to go see schools. That's fine as well. And the spring is also the most popular time for juniors to take standardized tests. I will get into test optional policies after we sort of go through this timeline. But many of our students, and it would differ from student to student, many of our students would take their first ACT in either February or April and take their first SAT, either that Saturday test date in March, or for some students, the in-school SAT. It's free, they're already registered, might be the first one that they take. And then there's the May and June test dates as well. There are some summer test dates. ACTs offered in July, the SATs offered the end of August. So students have a lot of opportunities to explore when they want to take SATs or ACTs, and we have AP exams in May. Another important part of junior year is securing those letters of recommendation. So juniors should really be thinking about the relationships that they're building with their teachers Am I connecting? Am I speaking up? Am I producing work that I'm proud of? If I'm struggling in a class, am I seeking help and support, right? Because we recommend in May, but certainly before the end of the school year, that juniors ask 2 teachers for letters of recommendation, okay? 2 core academic teachers, preferably from junior and or senior year, right? Because that's relevant, recent information that would be shared. And we also, the counseling department pushes into the junior English classes in the spring to go over all these nuts and bolts and reminders again. And sometimes students might schedule a follow-up meeting with me and or their counselor later in the spring of junior year to touch base. So I visited some schools, here's what I thought. I'm working on a draft of my college essay. Could you brainstorm it with me? I want to talk about my standardized testing. What do you think would benefit me? Or, you know, when we met back in January, I was thinking I wanted to study engineering, but I'm thinking more business now. How will this change my list of schools? Also, the final unit in their English classes in junior year, students work on a draft of their main college essay as part of their application process, okay? Then in August, usually it's the second week in August, so I'm thinking that's what it's going to be again this year. We hold our Camp College summer college application workshop for rising seniors. So this year we had 40% of rising seniors participate, which was really big. Again, a couple of those of you in the room have kids who are there at that, you know, workshop. It's great. It's a 3-day workshop. We're here full time. All the counselors are on hand. We have college admissions reps Zoom in and provide some advice. We have English teachers that review the college essay, and we basically get students through the entire common application. We walk them through it step by step. They're in a room with 75 other Weston High School students. We feed them a lot of food and a lot of candy, and we try to take stress. The whole point of the program is it's after the new Common App goes live every year, which happens August 1st, but before summer sports start. And so it's this downtime in the summer where they don't really hopefully have much else going on, where we can alleviate some stress and really get them feeling like they made a dent in the college process, okay? If you're not around and you can't participate in that, it's totally fine. They still get the individual support they need in the fall of senior year. Which brings me to senior year. So senior year is, so basically most of our seniors, 85% of our seniors typically submit at least one application by November 1st every year. So that's the deadline for early action and or early decision at many colleges in the country. The earliest possible deadline that any college is allowed to have is October 15th. All right, so most of our students should be gearing up to have a completed common application along with a completed essay and many completed supplemental essays by November 1st, right? Those students will typically hear sometime between December and January, sometimes late January, if they were admitted to those early action or early decision schools. For students who apply regular decision to colleges, they would apply in January. They would usually hear by late March, okay? Financial aid applications open in early October. Families can start doing that. We hold a financial aid workshop at the end of September, which we just held. Again, college admissions reps are here in full force for seniors to connect with the person who's going to be reading that application. And then students basically, unless a student applies binding early decision, they have until May 1st of their senior year to make their decision about where they want to attend. So they could look at all of their acceptances. And again, I know some of you in this room, your older children had difficulty making that final decision. They may have been choosing between 7 or 8 colleges, and they really had to take until like April 30th to make that final decision, and that is okay. So April of senior year, a lot of students may spend time going back and revisiting the colleges to which they were admitted and making informed decisions. And then the second half of May, after all of our AP exams are done, seniors participate in either the senior internship or the senior project program that I oversee and coordinate. So that's sort of it in a nutshell in terms of the timeline. And I didn't touch on everything, but I just want to give you guys an overview of sort of what to expect and when. So a couple of other things. I just want to see if I missed anything there. Nope. Okay. So the current state of college admissions. I think COVID's been interesting for a lot of reasons, right? Particularly when it comes to college admissions, some big changes have happened. And I think a question that comes up a lot, and I totally understand why, because it is confusing and it's ever changing, is standardized testing. So I do want to say that 1/3 of the colleges in the country were test optional prior to COVID, okay? There is a website called fairtest.org, And it always kept a running list of the colleges that were test optional or test flexible. So not every college required standardized testing to begin with. Some notable colleges had been test optional way before COVID even happened, right? Bowdoin, Bates, NYU was test flexible. Wake Forest, U Chicago had gone test optional before COVID. So basically, that is probably one of the biggest changes, right, since COVID, is that a majority of colleges in the country went test optional, meaning they did not require SATs or ACTs for admission. Many have remained test optional, some have not. MIT went back to requiring test scores. Georgetown went back to requiring test scores. The Florida public university system was never test optional, even during COVID. I know this because University of Florida is my alma mater, and I was very disappointed in that, but it was a state mandate. You know, where other systems have gone test blind, they won't even consider test scores anymore. So Worcester Polytech, the UC schools, the Washington State system, I think Iowa, they're at least permanently test optional. They might be test blind. Some schools, they won't consider them even if you submit them, right? And it's forever changing. So I know that it gets very confusing. I just met with Princeton the other day, and they told me we should expect for the next 2 years, they will definitely be test optional. We should expect testing to probably come back to being required for like maybe this year's freshmen, right? And then when I spoke to Michigan today, they remain test flexible for at least the next 2 years, meaning if you choose not to submit SAT or ACT, you could submit other scores like AP scores or IB scores instead to satisfy. So they have a testing requirement, but you can satisfy it by providing subject level tests through AP scores. So really interesting, right? How are you guys supposed to keep up with all of it? Well, you're not, right? It's not your job to know every college. It's kind of mine, but it's also our job is basically to work together to narrow down a list of schools for a student and then look at what their updated policies and procedures are on standardized testing. Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
They say test optional.
Yes. Are they truly test optional?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. When a kid submitted
Yes.
and a kid doesn't,
Yeah.
what's the difference?
So this is a really great question. There is a rumor in Fairfield County that test optional does not mean test optional if you live in Fairfield County. And parents say this to me, and they tell me it's about very specific schools. And then I get that specific school. I was talking to Sue at BC. I'm like, hey, Sue, you know, they're still saying at BC, kids from Fairfield County. She's like, I am so sick of getting this question from college counselors in Fairfield County. She's like, who is perpetuating this rumor? And I'm like, my guess might be test prep companies, right? Right? There's a bet, right? They need to stay in business. And I think that could be something. Every college admissions rep I have spoken to who at a test optional school has told me, we are truly test optional. We do not have the time to consider all the reasons why a student may not have submitted test scores, make assumptions, and then assign that to their application. Right? If a student thinks that their testing profile strengthens their application, they can submit them. If they do not think that it's an accurate reflection of their ability and they think that their transcript speaks like stronger on its own, then they should submit without. Students can look at the mid 50% range if a college publishes it of their accepted student testing profile and see if they fall above or below that. I will say that because all of these colleges have gone test optional, the average testing profile has gone up significantly at many of them because only kids with the strongest scores are choosing to submit. So, and then there's a bunch of colleges that are practicing something called do no harm, which is awesome. Like TCU was just here the other day and they're practicing do no harm, which means not every high school is as fortunate as Weston, right? To have counselors with a caseload of 180 students and a designated college counselor who would advise them. They know that there are kids coming from high schools with 1,000 students per counselor. They're not necessarily getting the best advice. And they say, if we see a kid whose transcript comes across our desk and it's wonderful, and they submitted a 900 on the SAT that's not competitive for us, we are not going to penalize that student for submitting scores. We will determine what aspects of the application we should be considering. That's wonderful. Not all colleges are doing that. Other colleges are saying, if you send us scores and they are weak, we are now forced to consider them as part of your process, and you have hurt yourself in the process here. So please, if you do not think you should submit test scores, don't, it won't hurt you. More and more colleges are saying that they will consider students for merit-based scholarships in absence of test scores. So the point though is that this is going to be a very individualized conversation with you as a parent, your child, your counselor, me, and the college admissions reps to determine. A lot of our students are submitting scores to some schools and not to others. So you can also cherry pick how you want to do that. I will say if your child is not a strong standardized tester, it is like beyond fine, right? There's never a better time to be an applicant to colleges without test scores. And we will help guide you and advise you and sort of keep you abreast. Yep.
Is there any difference that you're seeing in the college view of it between the ACT and the SAT?
Nope.
And just as a secondary, why does the school only provide a practice SAT and then actually sign the kid up for the SAT? Is there?
Well, the SAT we have to by state, that's our state test. So we have to. So Connecticut uses the SAT. It used to be the CAPT exam was our state level test to determine, to make sure students were at level for reading and math. So now they use the SAT. So that's why it's a state mandate that we have to do it. I don't know why the practice ACT is not administered here. Meredith Starzik, our director of guidance, might have more historical kind of data. A lot of schools don't offer the practice ACT. I will say when I was at Greenwich, we didn't offer it either. It was a much more sort of cumbersome thing to administer at schools. It wasn't as school friendly. So I think that's why a lot of schools historically haven't offered it. But we do offer, I also publish to a lot of students, anytime like a local test prep company or at the Fairfield Library, they do a practice like a full length ACT for free for students to get their score. I do share that with families all the time so that they have an option to take one that's full length so that they can at least get a score, a baseline without having to like sit through the actual ACT to get that baseline.
And the way the schools receive it, is it equal?
Equal, yeah. Schools do not have a preference between SAT or ACT. So some of our students choose to take both and like just see on the concordance tables which one they think represents them a little bit better. And so, these are all like great questions and it's why it's so confusing, right? Test flexible, test optional, test blind, tests required. And, so I get it. But I just want to prepare you guys for those conversations. Yeah.
We just had a comment online about Naviance.
Yeah.
Can you,
And I just got.
thanks.
Randy, Naviance is a great resource. However, the data regarding admissions rate seems incorrect. Published rates of acceptance of say 8% are really more like 3% when you hear from the schools directly about the numbers of applicants and the numbers of accepted students. What are your thoughts on this?
So Naviance should be used, the way that you should be using Naviance, first of all, it's up to the colleges to actually, when they're providing the general acceptance rates in there, that's actually the colleges that import it into Naviance. It's not done by Naviance, it's not done by us. The colleges have accounts with Naviance and that's their reporting. So if they're reporting something different on their website or nationally than they are in Naviance, like there could be those discrepancies. My advice when using Naviance is to really try to look at those scattergrams and look at the compare me charts to sort of understand how your child fares in relation to other Weston high school students who have been admitted, right? When we look at overall acceptance rates at college, it doesn't tell the whole story. So for instance, UNC Chapel Hill can only ever have 17% of their students be from out of state, right? UVA can only ever have 30% of their students be from out of state on campus. They can't go over that. It's a state mandate as the flagship state school. So the acceptance rate that they may report out could be like 35%, but that does not reflect what an out-of-state student needs to get into that institution, right? And overall acceptance rates don't also break down for us what a student needs to get into that college in early decision versus regular decision, right? Early decision is binding. A student has to go to that college if they get in. There can be a significant difference. So that is where use Naviance as a general overview and to get an idea of where your child falls in the process. But please, please, please engage me and your child's counselor in the conversation because we have the most detailed sort of information about how our students do in the application process, who's getting in. If you see an outlier on that scattergram, there's a good chance I'm going to know if that student was a recruited athlete, if they got in for a talent-based program, if they were a double legacy, if they represented some sort of diversity for that institution. So we can have conversations that are more personal. Again, that's the beauty of Weston, right? We're a small community and we can sort of track that data. So use Naviance as a general overview, but use us as that resource. Yep.
Hi. Naviance. So question, the scattergram.
Yes.
Is that like data over multiple years?
Yes, it's data from 2015 to 2000, so it's 7 years.
So obviously like
Each year
have
I
gotten way more competitive
Yes.
over that time period. So that's like, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt too,
100%.
right? Like if you're only falling towards like the marginal, you may be like a reach then, right?
Right.
Because like everything has shifted, right? And
Yeah.
then you're only showing, on the Naviance, it's only showing weighted GPAs right now. So
We
is that the
only,
most
we
relevant?
only provide a weighted GPA, so we do not provide an unweighted GPA in any of our transcripts or anywhere.
Really?
Yeah, so that's the only way that Weston reports, so that's why we put that there. But it is also confusing the scattergrams now, right? Because colleges have gone test optional, so
Right.
we don't know because it plots you on a scattergram with
Right.
standardized test scores. And we don't know if students submitted their standardized test scores, so those scattergrams are becoming
Right.
less useful.
And then the bar chart is showing like a 0 to 4 scale, but we have a GPA that's weighted on that, so.
No, the
Yeah.
bar on the
The bar
scattergram,
chart only shows like 0 to 4, which is like unweighted, but then.
I think that bar chart is, yeah, on the, so
The horizontal bar chart that's further down on Naviance.
So I think that is the college's data. That's not our data, that's the general
So
college
that's
data.
showing where.
What their
Western kids
unweighted-
fall versus other kids.
That's them reporting out because they recalculate GPAs, the colleges on their side. So I think that's them reporting their like national data.
But the GPA of your kid is showing up weighted in that.
Oh,
bar.
I would have to look,
So
I don't
was like,
actually,
It's just like those like.
and that's where I'm saying like,
Reliable to look at. or
yeah,
not.
that's why I'm saying like use Naviance as an overview because there is so much nuanced stuff there where it doesn't, and it's getting harder and harder
Right.
to produce, like when we're not, if a kid has test scores, but I don't know if they submitted them, like it's just not becoming. And I
Right.
can't have the scattergrams only show the last 2 years of data because we're such a small high school that like at a lot of colleges, that may mean that I don't have any applicants to show or one, and it's not a good sample
Yeah.
size. So that's kind of a
But that
challenge.
amount of years is so much.
I
and some
know,
schools
but
Change a lot.
I know, and every year I change it by 1 year. I could potentially reduce it by like 5 years, 4 years and
Almost
take a
probably
look.
be better to see less points, but more accurate points.
Yeah.
Just as a parent,
Yeah.
I'm thinking that, because I've had kids go through the process.
Yeah.
Years ago, and it's so different.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can look at that too. That might be a good thing to do right now.
Thanks.
Okay, there's so many hands up here. I'll start with, well, you're raising your hand, so you have a bad back. So I'm gonna take you first so you can put your hand down.
2 questions.
Yeah.
A couple of parents that I know are new, what is Naviance? I don't know if you were gonna get
Sure.
into that. And then, I don't know what a weighted GPA is versus an unweighted GPA.
Okay, great. So Naviance is a system that we use, students start using it in Weston in middle school. And it's a career and college sort of database that we use. Students can do career interest inventories, explore careers through it. That's what we're doing typically at the earlier years. There's a learning styles profiler in there. But then ultimately, students will use it to conduct college searches. It's where we house all of our application data, and it's actually the system, the program that we use to submit our documents electronically, the transcripts and letters of recommendation to colleges for students. So that's basically ultimately what it culminates in. We're exploring options of looking at other systems that, I think work a little. Naviance has, in my opinion, deteriorated a little bit. There's not that many players in the game though, but there are a couple of schools in our peer institutions that have switched. And so I'm exploring different options. It may not happen next year, but we will, of course, communicate with families if we switch to a different program that we think operates a little bit better and takes out some of those little annoying quirks that we keep running into. A weighted GPA, so we weight our grades if a student is in an honors course or an AP course, right? There's a little bit of a bump that's added to their grade in that class. So even though we are on a 4.0 weighted scale, our students can have over a 4.0 GPA, depending on how they performed. So we have students with 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, if they're in a number of rigorous courses and have done well in those courses. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go around the table. Yeah.
What kind of support do you offer students who want to take an alternative path?
So
my junior daughter, Claire, she's interested in Beijing University.
Okay.
Is this the kind of thing that your office is able to?
We do, and we provide as much support as we possibly can. It's hard to be well versed in all of the colleges in the world. We have about 4,000 in the United States. I work closely with kids when they're applying to colleges in the UK. I'm very familiar with the UCAS system, Canadian schools, things like that. We will absolutely support a student's application if they are looking at a country that's outside of like and we'll figure out as much as we need to with the student. So while I may not have worked with a student on applying to Beijing University thus far, we're happy to like dive in and do it with them. So, sometimes it takes a little bit of more legwork on the student side because there's just not that much information here. But yeah, we would support that process as well.
And then alternatives to college, like
Yeah.
a gap year, or Are you offering this to students who seem less prepared or
Sure.
more anxious or?
Yeah, and we have a lot of resources too. So in addition to me and their counselor working with them, we also have Eric Rudvig, who's our transition counselor here. And he works also with students who are like maybe not going to be college bound and trying to figure that out a little bit and working on programming having to do with that. About 95% of our students will go on to a 4-year school. But for those that don't, you know, and the gap year thing I just want to touch on. So if your child is considering taking a gap year, so a year after high school before starting college, we typically still recommend that they go through the college application process here as a senior with all the support available to them, because most colleges will allow you to deposit at their school and then defer enrollment for a year, and then you could pursue your gap year. And even if you choose not to ultimately go to that one school, you at least have gone through the process, you know what it looks like, you got into a school. So in terms of what a student wants to do with their gap year, it like could range from students getting a job, an internship, doing research, backpacking, exploring art, right? You know, volunteering, doing AmeriCorps, things like that. So there's such a wide range of things a student can do. Typically, students who decide they want to take a gap year often come to us with an idea of what they already want. Like usually a student who's thinking, I'd like to take a year off. It's usually because they have something in mind that they would like to do in that time off. But again, happy to help them sort of explore and research and navigate. But we do encourage students to still at least apply to some colleges here senior year, even if they think they're going to take a gap year. We also have students, obviously we have students in this year's senior class who are going to technical and vocational schools. And we are absolutely here to support that process as well. So lots of different kinds of options. And there's, again, we're really well resourced here in terms of the counselor, me, our transition counselor, that we'll sort of meet the needs of any student. I talk so much about 4-year college because it's such a majority of our student body, but that doesn't at all mean that our department and our school doesn't support alternative paths for any of our kids. Yeah. And the other thing is too, we also do work with any students who are with learning disabilities. We work to support students on looking at the different levels of programming that might be appropriate for them to be successful. So whether they're looking at colleges with services, colleges with coordinated services, or colleges with comprehensive support programs for students with learning disabilities, or Eric would work with some of our students who might be going to sort of they could be on colleges campuses like the RISE program at Sacred Heart, but students were preparing for independent living in lieu of college. So working on those programs as well. Yep.
Thank you.
Of course. Did anybody else? Christiana? No? Okay.
I do.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit, Joanne touched a little bit on weighted GPAs. Weston reports weighted GPAs only.
Yeah.
And do we take into consideration elective courses in the GPA? Does that fall into the GPA?
Electives do go into the GPA. Yeah. So do PE and phys ed. All of our courses are factored into the GPA.
So do you find that the colleges actually remove those from the GPA?
Often, yes.
And when they do remove those and they are giving it their own weighted, do you find that they give weighted for AP and they discount honors?
No, not necessarily. All colleges do it differently, and they may assign their own. What a lot of colleges will do is, and not all, like every school has their own process for doing this. And by the way, not every school will tell you how they do it. But what a lot of schools do is they might pull out elective courses. They may calculate only a core academic course GPA using just your grades and not factor in, God bless you, any weighting. But then what they might do to come up with an academic index for the student is give the student a rigor rating. So maybe on a scale of like 1 to 5, they look at our school profile and see what classes we offer in terms of honors and AP and standard. And they say, based on what this high school offers and based on what this student took, we would give them a 4 rigor rating or a 5 rigor rating or a 3. So the GPA is the GPA, and then they assign like a level of rigor to that student's overall academic profile. So usually they don't weight APs or weight honors classes. They just do a GPA, and then they look at our rigor and assign that to the student's academic index in conjunction with their GPA.
So they do.
And again, not all schools do it that way, but many do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I know a lot of high schools actually remove the extracurriculars that are not extracurriculars.
A lot of high schools do.
A lot of high schools do.
In all the 4 high schools I've worked at, which are very similar to Weston, I've never worked at one where we
Some of the
removed
private
that.
schools do.
Okay.
So the private
I worked at a
schools-
private school too in California. I never, yeah.
Fairfield Prep does.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Yeah, I've never heard of a
Yeah, no,
school
they-
doing that. Yeah.
They take out band, they take out PE, health, all that stuff. They take it
Okay.
all out, and they only pretty much do 4 classes, 4 curriculum.
Mhm.
But do you think, I guess, I don't know, I guess Weston, the way that Weston does it is gonna be better. It's gonna give it more positive, because in order for them to start weighing the universities with the Frigger
Yeah.
score, they have to make it past that first gate,
Mhm.
right? And so having a higher GPA is gonna get you at least past that first. gate.
Right, and I like don't want to send a message to our kids ever that like an elective course that they maybe were like super passionate about,
Right.
that those grades don't count.
Doesn't count.
I don't want that class, like I want our, and this is like where I think, and this is gonna go into the next part of my conversation, which is gonna be focused a lot about on balance in this process and mental health and reminding ourselves like what's really important. And so I do think that like if we decide to say like, take band, take this, and don't worry, like it won't count in your GPA, it almost like sends a message like that these things that you love to do or these things that you chose to take are less important or significant. And I don't want kids to feel that way. And I know like sometimes I'm living in this like, you know, other universe, but yeah, we don't do that. And that's way above my pay grade. So I wouldn't even have a say if that was being done.
I agree. I think that that's actually a healthy way to do it.
Yeah.
On a second question, merit scholarship.
Sure.
Schools, their merit scholarship deadline, a lot of times their school merit scholarship deadline
a
is
little
very
earlier.
different.
Mhm.
Early.
Sure.
So you have all of that in your spreadsheets. So you know
Yeah,
which
absolutely. So
schools-
like if you wanted to be considered for merit scholarships at Indiana, you need to submit by November 1st. If you want to be considered for merit scholarships at UConn, you got to submit by December 1st.
Right.
University of Rochester, your favorite if you apply by December 1st.
Okay.
So we're aware of that. But again, it is also up to students to if they're applying to 10 colleges, hopefully they can do enough research on the 10 schools to which they're applying to know how they should be applying, but we will guide them appropriately toward all of that. And another thing for any senior parents out there watching, hi, I don't know how many of you participate in these, but if your child is applying to UConn, they should submit that application on November 15th or Southern, Eastern, Western. That is the state of Connecticut, that's our free application day. So you save yourself $80 by submitting it on November 15th. It is only, and then they get it in before the scholarship consideration deadline. So everyone submit your public university applications on November 15th. Not before, not after, just that day.
Sounds like it would crash the system.
It doesn't, it works,
That's
and it's
crazy.
free. Yeah, it's great.
2 questions.
Sure.
It seems like you have a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
What resources do you need to make this process a little bit easier and less painful for parents, kids? And then my second question is, you said the curriculum is really, really heavy. But by the time they hit junior, senior year, certain paths are already set.
Yeah, and that's okay.
So how do you, I mean, you say you don't want to hear from freshman parents. My child is.
But if a child is on a path,
Yeah.
that would mean they're never going to be in AP math or that, right? That's okay. Like I said, there's 4,000 colleges in the country. There are plenty of, not every school needs you to take. We are talking 80% of colleges in the United States admit more than 50% of their applicants. If we choose to only focus on the most competitive schools that want the most rigorous classes and A+ in all of them and perfect test scores, and by the way, kids may still not even get in, like then we are trying to chase a moving target, right? So when 9th grade parents are calling and say, well, what classes does my kid need to take to get into here? I'm like, your kid's probably on the trajectory, right? And junior year, we're having like really important conversations, but if it's something where the student's already set up, it's not a strength of theirs, or they're not like at the honors level, that's okay. We're just going to make sure that our list of colleges that the student applies to is appropriate to their profile, right? We're going to be realistic. So rather, again, than a student trying to chase all through high school what they think the college wants, particularly if it's just not going to happen, right, for that specific kid, if it's outside that kind of, like, there are so many schools that would take a student happily from here who have 0 APs. I will tell you that our students from Weston High School who are in that like average range, like 2.8 to 3.4 GPA, you know, taking classes, maybe a few honors classes, maybe they try an AP class senior year, standardized testing, 1050, 1100, doing like really great in that mid 50% range. Those students at Weston High School get into typically, if they follow our advice, between 80 and 100% of the colleges to which they apply, right? Like those are the schools that are predictable and remain predictable and who they admit and who they don't. It's only at the very top that it becomes highly unpredictable. So I don't want kids taking classes or overriding to try to fight and get into classes just because they think it's going to make them more suitable for a specific college down the road, because there's a point of diminishing return. If a student doesn't perform well in those classes, that did not serve them well at all, right? So it's a balance. So I would say just stay on the authentic academic trajectory that you are on as a student. Think about your strengths, think about your weaknesses, think about what you're interested in, and remain on that very authentic academic path. And then trust that when it comes time to apply to college, we will find the appropriate colleges that would be a great fit for your student, academically, socially, extracurricularly, all of that. And did you have another question?
The resources.
Oh, what resources do I need, or what
Yeah.
resources do you guys need?
Do you need?
Oh, God.
Here
A
goes the
sleep
luxury.
aid would be great. This one, I couldn't even wrap my head around it. I mean, we're doing okay. Like it's always like this at this time of year, right? Where it's back to back to back meetings and it's crazy. Like I said, we're more resourced here at Weston than 95% of the high schools, public high schools, especially in Connecticut or in the United States are. I think just what helps for me is when students are aware and sort of make advanced appointments. This time of year, my calendar usually books up 2 weeks out. So if students are just prepared for that and sort of make advanced appointments and families make that advanced time so that we can carve it out and make sure everybody's being seen, utilizing the writing center for help with their essays, utilizing their counselor in addition to me. Yeah, would I like love an administrative assistant? Sure, but like that's never going to happen, like ever. And I just do my own calendar and do everything else, and it's fine. But you know, I think I could think if there was like something logistical that would actually like maybe help kind of get things flowing a little bit. But I think we do pretty well. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah.
If for students who are interested in applying overseas, since the universities and some of the tests are quite different, say for instance, Europe, it's different in France.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's more difficult to be able to go out there to visit colleges. Is it possible they could meet you earlier in say 10th grade?
I don't meet with students in 10th grade. I don't have the time, if I'm being very honest. It would really, I don't really get downtime because when I start with the juniors, I'm still overlapping with the seniors. So it is a little bit hard. I don't meet with students in 10th grade, but there are a lot of great. And again, I'm personally, if I'm being very honest, I'm not going to know the differences between like the very individual requirements from French schools to Austrian schools to German school. Like that it would be a lot for any one person to know, but there are a lot of resources out there that families, if a student knows that that's their trajectory, a lot of international and European schools do programming in the United States. They have large scale info sessions. I've sent them out in the past to families when they've done them, but they do online information sessions on their websites for international applicants. I would highly recommend connecting with maybe some of the institutions that the student thinks they're interested in, just to get that like general overview of how they should be prepared. That would be the most appropriate kind of way to be gathering that information early in like 10th grade. Yep.
So the current juniors, their freshman year, for some of them were kind of academically, I don't know what to call it, just a challenging year, let's call it, or maybe they weren't achieving where their potential showed, say sophomore, junior year. And this is obviously probably anecdotal from your standpoint, but are colleges considering that wonky pandemic year that really killed the kids?
Well, what's interesting is, so you assume that it killed kids. What colleges,
I know there's some that did
what colleges are struggling with more
Yeah.
is to just figure out how authentic those grades are, period. Because at many high schools across the country, those grades were highly inflated, right? Because kids like weren't in school, they were just like throwing out A's, like everybody was a mess, right? So
some places,
some places, but I'm saying colleges have the job, right? They're not only getting applications from Weston, they're getting applications internationally, right? Think of kids applying from China, right? Things like that. So it's their job to sort of decipher like what's true and what's not, and what was challenging for the student. And there's a lot of places within the application that a student can advocate on their own behalf. So there's now a COVID question on the Common App. Were you deeply impacted by COVID, either academically or in your family, and how so? There's also an additional information section where a student can write up to 650 words of anything else they want to share. There's the counselor letter of recommendation. There's the main college essay. So there are a lot of places for colleges that do interviews. There's interviews. There's a lot of places where a student can explain those things. But we have to remember, these college admissions reps, they were dealing with the same like sort of life challenges that we all were during COVID. So they understand that it's not unique to our kids, but kids need to be able to articulate. And it's not only about COVID, right? Like we've had students who struggle for various reasons, right? We've had students who have dealt with mental health issues at different points, a late diagnosed learning disability. Maybe, you know, foreign language was always a struggle because they didn't know that they had an auditory processing disorder. Maybe there was something going on at home. Maybe there was the death of a parent. There is context to every student's experience in high school. And there's plenty of places within the college application to provide that. And I do think students thinking about their experiences in high school should find their voice and learn to advocate on their behalf and explain that, provide that context. So a college isn't left wondering. But the best thing a student can do is then improve their grades and those, you know, and then explain, like, once we came back to school and things were normal and I was able to rip the mask off,
Right.
you know, I was able to refocus.
So like when you're looking at schools to try to figure out your safeties, your targets, your reaches, those kind of things are
I mean,
very subjective.
yeah.
Like, are you able to add, like when we sit down with you later?
Yeah, we
you're
can
able
provide
to
context.
Figure out like how that
Yeah.
will likely play out.
Even with, even with maybe a bad year or a bad couple of grades, we are pretty good at assessing what schools would be in the target reach and safety range. But remember, like, it changes every year.
There's no guarantee, of course.
Well, there's no guarantee. Some schools are wonky. Last year, Northeastern's overall acceptance rate was 7%. That's like on par with Cornell. And by the way, they do a lot of things to in their
They
admissions
play the
practices.
Saturday,
They play the
right.
games, right? Tulane is now enrolling 60% of their class through binding early decision. Same with Colgate. So from year to year, these things change. I met with Bowdoin 2 days ago with Meg Swift at Bowdoin. And I was like, Meg, what's going on? Are you taking anybody other than recruited athletes? Like, talk to me, tell me the truth. And she's like, I'm not gonna lie. 62% of our class now comes from outside of New England. It's our institutional priorities. Like, New England has always been our bread and butter. They're looking to diversify. And so these are these outside variables that we can't account for, but that we try to stay abreast of so that we can form families. And I want to just pivot to the next part of my conversation where we do our best to know what's happening out there. We do our best to advise families. And I think one of my challenges, and I've been doing this 18 years, I'm used to it, but I think there's often a mindset among families that there is, right, but one path to success. Going to a good college, whatever that is defined by, means a good life. And anything less than that, I am on a path to what? Life's failure. I won't meet the right partner. I won't have the right job. And so I say to families, what are you using to determine a good college? And rankings. I'm like, do you know what colleges do to manipulate those rankings? Do you know that they will admit 40% of their incoming class for spring admission so that they don't have to count those kids in their acceptance numbers? So it decreases their acceptance rate, increases their selectivity, and bumps them in the rankings. Those rankings don't tell you about the quality of an experience your child is going to have at a particular institution. So I think we also need to like step away a little bit and say, I'm an educated adult raising a great kid in a great community, right? In a rigorous academic environment where they're highly involved in the community. My child has the foundation to be successful in this world. And if they don't end up in this one particular college, odds are they're going to be okay because they have the skills, right? And I think that when we get so obsessed, right, with the idea that it must be this one school or this one certain kind of school, and hear me now, it's just getting more competitive at the most selective schools, particularly for kids from the Northeast who fit a lot of the demographic backgrounds that our kids fit. Okay, I'm not gonna like sugarcoat that. Colleges have their own priorities. They want an enriched, diverse incoming class of students. They want a diversity of thought, background, perspective. And sometimes, no matter how academically qualified our kids are, that just means they don't check that box. That does not mean that your child's not going to be successful at another institution and that they're not going to have amazing friends and have a great experience and find their life's work. Right. And so I think like, and we were talking about books that, you know, like my favorite book is still Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be by Frank Bruni. And it's the antidote to the college admissions mania. And it's like so valuable. And it's true. I mean, I think, and for those of you who have kids already in college, I think we can attest to the fact that like, when your kids find that right fit, like a place where they can thrive, not just academically, but socially, extracurricular, going to a specific school, just going to that named school does not determine your outcomes. It's what you put into your college experience. And I just want us to remember, like, I think if we're really encouraging our kids, rather like what AP class do you have to start taking in this year to get into this college? Again, it's going to be different by the time your kid probably graduates, but rather saying, like, what do you love to do? What actually brings you joy? What are you happy doing? What makes your mind tick? What do you geek out over, right? Let's do that. Let's do that. And let's give it our all, right? Throw yourself into the classes that you love and don't push yourself in rigorous classes that really don't kind of fit your strengths and your skills and your interests, because it might backfire. And I know that this sounds like, some people roll their eyes when I talk this way, like, oh, okay, yeah, whatever. Like, this sounds great, but I mean it. I think we need to be thinking a little bit more about like the reality of the landscape out there at the most selective schools. And also just the mental well-being of our students. The mental health crisis among high school students is real. It is very real in Fairfield County, right? We have had students take their own lives in neighboring school districts, kids who looked like they had it all on paper. The mental health issue is real in Weston High School. I work in the counseling office, and the uptick in the last 5 years has been exponential. And part of it is driven by the pressure kids are putting on themselves for achievement because of future success, right? And they align like future success with getting into a certain school sometimes. And we really need to be aware of like the damage we could be doing to them in the process. And right, my background is a school counselor. So first and foremost, I'm going to care about the well-being of our kids. Yeah. Is there a question behind
With
it?
that point,
Yeah.
what is there as parents beyond not being the parent who's driving that anxiety level of you must be, you know, I think just being in this environment with their peers, there's sort of a pressure cooker sense, and it just seems to infuse into every kid, despite whatever approach or gentler approach the parents may take about follow your goals, follow your passions, and all that, and don't focus on the top of the top, focus on you. What else can we do as a community to help our kids not to just feel better about this whole process?
Yeah, and I think as a community, it's so hard, right? We're also in a small town, and it is like an incubator here sometimes of stress, and I do understand that. I think first of all, so for junior and senior parents, I think one thing you can really be doing is as you start exploring colleges, like visiting schools, really celebrating the likely schools on the students list, the schools where a student has a really good chance of getting into. Like when you're on campus, buy a t-shirt there, right? Talk about, oh my God, you get so much scholarship money at this school. Like, how awesome would that be? We might be able to help you with like study abroad or grad school, right? Genuinely showing interest and enthusiasm for the colleges we know they've got a good shot of getting into sends a message to them too, that this is genuinely acceptable, right? In my family. I think also as a community, I hear it all the time. I hear it sometimes in the walls of the building. People don't mean it, right? But a teacher who wrote a letter of recommendation, hey, did you hear? Did you get in? I think as families, keeping this process private for your own child, but also not asking other kids sort of what they're doing about college. It's nobody's business. Keeping it off of social media. And I struggle too, even with like our college day that we have here, like May 1st, where every kid wears their sweatshirt. I know the kids who are going to their maybe one college they got into and they're not enthusiastic about it yet. They might be, but they're feeling like the process didn't go the way they want. And when other kids are celebrating, and I'm not saying other kids shouldn't celebrate, but I think we have to keep things really quiet, right? I think we have to care less about what other people are doing. I think we have to keep the conversation on, you are going to be great. Here are all the reasons I know that no matter where you end up, you are going to be great, right? And reminding your child, this was like a thing that we had when I was at, we took it from the book, Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. We stole this idea when I was at Pacific Ridge School. We had parents write a letter to their kids the night before they were gonna get back like an early decision. Except like when they were gonna get it back, write a letter of like all the reasons, like why they were so proud of their child and like why they knew they would be successful, no matter how they're not defined by an admissions decision. So I think reinforcing all the things that are defining about our kids, right? The things that make them good souls, how they help their siblings, right? Always like honoring, focusing less on achievement in an academic or college related sense, I think is really important, but it's hard, right? I mean, we're in a really tough community. And I think Meredith Starzik and I have actually been talking. There's a speaker that's going to be at Wilton Public Schools, a psychologist talking about the mental health issue and sort of what we might even be doing subconsciously that's impacting our kids. And we were talking a little bit about maybe focusing some programming on the mental health aspect and bringing in maybe some professionals, maybe a PhD, to talk about like what we could be doing as a community to lessen this, right? Because I think we all agree. I mean, we've talked about it, like the PTO. I know that everybody's really focused on this. I know that, you know, but I do think we need to have some tools and resources in place because it's a lot. Yeah.
I know we've got to wrap up. So I'm just gonna say one comment. That pressure cooker does start the second they walk through the doors here. I know just from seeing two of my own come in as freshmen, they take it on. They
take it on. I know.
Start planning.
And let me tell you,
their
not
whole
every kid is
trajectory.
like that. There are kids who are like high achieving, who are like great and are like, I know I'd be happy anyway. And like, oh God, it's like a breath of fresh air. I'm like, you're okay, we're okay, like you're okay. What are you taking? Can you share it with the rest of us? Like, okay, you're okay. So there are parents that are doing a great job and there are kids that are doing a great job of doing it, but we worry most about those who aren't, right? So yeah, were there questions behind my head?
Just one.
Okay.
Randy, no, there's a lot of Randy, thank you. And Randy, this was super informative. So yes.
Oh, okay. You're welcome. Oh, you're welcome. Hi, you're there.
But Randy, what is more beneficial? A B in an honors class or an A in a regular class?
So we usually say, because that rigor thing, I mean, colleges do want to see that a student is challenging themselves. They want to be able to predict whether a student is going to be able to do the work in a college level setting, right? So rigorous classes can predict that a little bit better. I would say if a student can get a B in a more rigorous class, I would go for that over the A in a standard class every day of the week. If we're going to be in the C range or below, that's when I think it's hard to predict in advance, right? But really, I think going with the teacher recommendation for the courses that a student's recommended for, we have students who try to like override into every rigorous class and sometimes it really backfires. But I would always take a C in a more rigorous, a B in a more rigorous class over an A in a standard class any day.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any last minute questions?
That was amazingly informative.
Sorry, I spoke really fast, but this
Right
gives me
on
4
time.
minutes to get to one of your children who
Awesome.
shall remain nameless. Okay.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
guys, we're so great
Randy.
seeing you guys in person. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I think we'll wrap up. All right, well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming in person again. And those of you who came online as well. Great meeting. So glad you're able to attend. Please look out for our next in-person and hybrid general board meeting on November the 4th.
For those that missed it, will be posted.
Yes, and for anybody who missed it and wasn't available to see it live online, it will be posted shortly on our YouTube channel. And you can find a link to that on our website. Any other questions here or online? All right, then. Thanks very much. Wrapping up and have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.